Welcome back. So, you may have seen Alex O'Connor recently interviewed and debated Michael Knowles about whether or not America is a Christian nation. I've never had very much of a high opinion of Michael Knowles. He just seems kind of pretentious and goofy. I really don't like any commentators who just do a show where it's only them, because they just start sniffing their own farts and nobody really challenges any of their ideas. And they just say stuff that's so dumb. But weirdly, a lot of these people, like him and Ben Shapiro, when they actually get interviewed they're with other people, you start to see like, oh, okay, well, this guy actually knows a lot of stuff, and he's not being quite so arrogant. He's not pushing ideas that are fringe so much because they know that they'll get pushback. They sound a lot more honest in these contexts. And after watching this, I kind of realized, yeah, he does know a lot of stuff. Now, I disagree with most of what he thinks on this still, but there you go. Funny enough, I had actually been thinking about this, and I made kind of a short video on TikTok about this. That was like the day before Alex dropped the video, and so I thought, oh, that's funny. So I'm going to kind of jump in on this, and I'm going to add my own commentary. I wrote a lot more, and after listening to what they talked about, that gave me some additional insights and some more things to say, so we'll go through that. Real quick, if you could like the video, and if you're not a subscriber already, if you could subscribe, that really helps a lot with the growth on the channel. I do also sell merchandise. I have a Patreon. I have a book that's on sale, so if you want to learn how to deal with people that think the earth is flat and that evolution isn't true, my book is basically a handbook for that kind of thing. So for me, if we want to establish, is America a Christian country, then I think we kind of have to start with what is a country. So like the definition of a country is it's the government plus its land territory. And the land territory, I mean, that's irrelevant. So does the United States have a Christian government? Well, I mean, we're not a theocracy, so no. I mean, I almost feel like the conversation ends right there, but I have a lot more to say, obviously. I don't know if this is a good metaphor, but here's something I thought of. So, is this a Christian building? Yes, a church is obviously a Christian building. Now, how about this building? This is a factory that makes Qurans. Is it a Christian building? No, that doesn't even make any sense. But what if I told you that everyone who works at that factory and the people who built it and the CEO of the company are all Christians? I still think that you would say no, and I would agree. Now, how about this building? It's the United States Post Office. Everyone that works there is a Christian. The institution was created by Christians. It's a functional part of the country, but I don't think it makes any sense calling it a Christian building. And so if we're talking about, are we a Christian country? I think it's like these buildings. Even if everybody in them is Christian, and which isn't the case, and even if everybody that started the company or built the building, which we'll talk about that's also not really the case, but even if they were Christians, that wouldn't be enough to say we're a Christian country. Now, in what way could America be a Christian country? Well, it would have to do, in order for us to be a Christian country, America would have to do something like what a church does, because a country isn't something that just sits there doing nothing. The land does, but the government does not. So can we establish that America does like Christian things, or is like functionally Christian? I don't really think so, although there are a couple of interesting cases which we will get to. Has America ever exported Christianity? Has America ever had like a missionary project? That's something like what a church does. Well, America has meddled in like countless foreign affairs, but never in the interest of spreading Christianity or like stopping the spread of atheism. Most of this happened in the 20th century, but it was against, leftist governments who, yes, a lot of them were communistic. A lot of them weren't. We just said they were, but it was really just right-wing versus left-wing, capitalism versus Marxism or communism. A lot of those leftist governments, they were giving money to they were giving land to the poor, especially in South America. And there were business interests from the United States that had land there that had an interest in that not happening. So they literally organized with the CIA to do that. If the whole concept of a banana republic and Edward Bernays, who's the father of modern public relations and stuff like that, you can read all about this stuff. It's really wild what was happening down there. No, I can't think of any examples in the 20th century where we were doing any kind of like missionary projects. Even Ronald Reagan, who was very much like an evangelical type and bringing down the Berlin Wall and all of that stuff, nobody really remembers that, or I don't think at the time thought about that as like Christianity winning a battle against atheism. It was the political interests of like the American political system winning out over communism. I don't have anything for the 19th century because America was just kind of busy forming its own identity and trying to keep itself together. But if we move to the 21st century, we haven't had any of those like missionary type missions either. I mean, all of our interventions this century have been about resources, trade, and capital. So like I'm generalizing obviously, but I don't really think I'm super off base here. So some of the meddling we did, I mean, you can at least claim like we did, and you can make the argument that, we were trying to engage in like nation building and promoting stability. So like Afghanistan and Libya, which were catastrophic failures. But like take Libya. What were we doing there? Well, we were actually supporting an internal movement against the government. That was the so-called Arab Spring movement. And those movements, they were always in an interest of expanding rights, like promoting liberalism, ending corruption, preventing or ending civil wars, and promoting democracy. This isn't a Christian movement really in any way. So, does America act out a Christian mission within itself, like what a church does? Well, most people who argue we are a Christian nation, they don't just like merely mean that we're a nation composed of people who are mostly Christian. So like remember the factory that makes Qurans, right? It has to be more than just that. So we'll leave aside the like demographics of the country and start talking about like what does America do? What was America founded upon? We will jump right into, was America founded on Judeo-Christian principles? I really don't think so. The only sense that it was is in the sense that Judeo-Christian principles overlap with ideas that are not unique to them. So, they don't really get credit, even if the overwhelming number of people present in the founding of this country happened to be Christians. So, like, the United States is a secular republic. Like, in other words, what the United States is, what our country is, functionally, is a country that operates and was founded on the concept of representative government, not like spreading Christianity. And you won't find a single sentence that supports democracy in the Bible. You do find stuff that arguably is like opposed to it. There are lots of figures in the Bible who rule over a group of people, and their position, their leadership position or whatever, was legitimized or endorsed or appointed like by God. For example, King David, he was told his dynasty would last forever. King Saul was chosen by God, and he fell out of favor, but that was really just because he kind of failed to live up to God's expectations. Moses was never like a ruler. I mean, none of these people existed, but whatever. But even though Moses wasn't really ruler over the Israelites, he was the mouthpiece of God, and he communicated. He was the middleman between God and them. He told the Israelites what they were commanded to do. So these aren't just not democratic. I would say they're actually anti-democratic. In terms of like functionally what it is that the United States actually does, well, where do we get that from? We get those from Greco-Roman principles. So if we try to use this same logic, then we conclude that the United States is a pagan nation or is founded on pagan principles. Now, nobody makes that argument, even people like me that argue against the we are a Christian nation. I think that's just dumb. But what about our moral and legal code? Maybe that's Christian? Well, one of the most important principles of the American Constitution is that all people have religious freedom and that the nation shall never establish a national religion. Now, that cannot be reconciled with, for example, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods beside me. Now, later on, with regard to this, the plot does sort of thicken, and this is an area where I will cede some ground, but, well, you'll see when we get there. In other words, a government or whatever that is Christian, that functionally is Christian, can't endorse anything other than Jesus is God, the Trinity, the doctrine of the Trinity is true, one God, all of those types of things. But our founding documents don't do that. Here's another piece of evidence. John Adams, when he was president, he ratified the Treaty of Tripoli, which says, in part, as the government of the United States of America is not in any sense founded on the Christian religion. Now, Knowles in the interview makes the argument that, oh, Madison, he didn't mean that. He just said that because they needed to gin together some diplomacy to get these Muslim pirates to stop attacking our ships. He basically accuses Adams of being like dishonest to one of the founding ideas or concepts of America. Now, along with that, you'll also hear the arguments from people. Knowles makes this argument, I've heard it in PragerU videos before too, that the whole concept, the idea of separation of church and state, that was never in the Constitution, not really. It was just an invention by Jefferson, because it doesn't actually say that anywhere. Those words are in a letter that Jefferson sent to a friend. But, well, James Madison wrote the First Amendment. Well, he actually wrote the Bill of Rights. It was inspired by papers from John Jay and Hamilton and others. But when James Madison argued before Congress, what does the Establishment Clause actually mean? This is what he said: that Congress should not establish a religion and enforce the legal observation of it by law, nor compel men to worship God in any manner contrary to their conscience. So I think that really is an endorsement of the concept of separation of church and state. People should be free to believe in whatever they want to believe in or to believe in nothing at all. Again, that can't work with I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other gods before me. Here's where it gets a little bit dicey. In the interview, Knowles makes the argument that America functionally was a Christian nation right from the get-go, because America actually did have blasphemy laws. In fact, they are still in effect in some places, and what are called blue laws. So that's like not working on the Sabbath. I think for the people arguing we're a Christian nation, that's the best possible argument, because now we have a function that is like what a church does as part of what the nation does. It's not all encompassing, it's just a piece of it, but I think it's probably the best thing they have. So here's an example of a blasphemy law. I don't remember where this is from, but I copy and pasted it. So, quote, if any person by writing or speaking shall blaspheme or curse God, or shall write or utter any profane words of and concerning our Savior Jesus Christ, or of and concerning the Trinity, or any of the persons thereof, he shall on conviction be fined to no more than $100, or imprisoned not more than 6 months, or both fined and imprisoned, as aforesaid, at the discretion of the court. Now that's pretty black and white, but I'm not super convinced by it, because I think it's all just a bunch of hypocrisy. Again, Knowles makes the argument that no. This is just a modern liberal thing where they say, oh, you have the founders all wrong. What the founders actually meant was total freedom from religion and to worship whatever religion anybody wants. Just ignore the fact that we always had these blasphemy laws and blue laws on the books. Now, I think he's both right and wrong and kind of misses the point. Now, we aren't 100% certain, but some of Madison's biographers and historians claim that he was a deist like Jefferson. Now, if that's true, then that would make Madison, the guy who wrote the First Amendment, a criminal. Some people argue for intentionality or originality. What did the founders originally mean? Well, if we take Madison's testimony before Congress about what the First Amendment really means, and if he really was a deist, then that means he wrote an amendment that would criminalize himself. I don't think you can make a good argument at all that Madison would have wrote a law that would make him a criminal. But even if he was a Christian, believed in the Trinity and all that other stuff, what he argued before Congress, I don't see how you can possibly hold that belief and simultaneously believe that blasphemy laws are legitimate. Madison is the author of that amendment, of that idea. It's not his fault that other people didn't interpret it correctly. The other thing is, it would basically make it illegal not to be Christian. Now, somebody might say no, that's not how it works. But think about it. No, it's not illegal to be Jewish, right? Okay, but what if somebody said to you, in public, hey, do you accept the doctrine of the Trinity? Well, what choice do they have other than to say no? And then they would be blaspheming. So I feel like these people are kind of trying to have it both ways. They'll say yeah, you can belong to any religion you want, but we're a Christian nation. Well, but you can't belong to any religion you want, because if you aren't, then you're a blasphemer, and by definition, it's illegal. Now, some of these people are insane, and they think that is a good thing and that we should be a country like that. But some of the more reasonable ones wouldn't actually say that we should be a country where it's illegal to be an atheist, a Jew, a Muslim, a Buddhist, or whatever. A lot of times they'll hit back with something to the effect of, so you think they just made all these laws that were directly opposed to what the other founders said and what's in the Constitution? Yes. Speaking of the founders, because I haven't actually said a lot about them, Jefferson, Franklin, and quite a lot of people think Madison as well, they were deists. Adams was actually a Unitarian, and he wanted a Bill of Rights. So I strongly think Adams would have endorsed what Madison said, what the Establishment Clause says, and what Adams would have meant, what Madison would have meant. Because if not, then Adams, a Unitarian, he would be a blasphemer too. The guy, he wouldn't have supported a law that would have made him a criminal. Adams wrote the Massachusetts Constitution and some other things that directly inspired the Bill of Rights, so he was pretty influential. Hamilton was he was a pretty devout Christian, so was John Jay. I don't really count Washington, and the reason why is because he actually didn't contribute anything to the Constitution or the Bill of Rights. He didn't write any Federalist Papers or anything else. We actually didn't even have a Bill of Rights. There was no First Amendment when Washington became president. I think they were ratified during his first presidency, and he did think that we needed a Bill of Rights, but he didn't play any role in creating them. Now, apart from the blasphemy laws, the second best argument, I think, comes from the personal views of John Jay. Here's, for example, a quote from him. "No human society has ever been able to maintain both order and freedom, both cohesiveness and liberty, apart from the moral precepts of the Christian religion." Now, I just flat out don't really agree with that. And yeah, that was his viewpoint. I never claimed that all of the founding fathers were atheists or anything, but I also don't really think it matters that much if some of them are Christians, even devout Christians. I mean, John Jay did write some of the Federalist Papers, but Madison wrote the Bill of Rights. And Jefferson, who's a blasphemer, wrote the Constitution. I think the First Amendment contradicts the First Commandment. I also think blasphemy laws contradict the First Amendment and Madison's view of what the government should do. But they were the laws we had on the books. Now, they can't both be right, and I think it's because they were actually being hypocrites, and they were actually, like, it's not like Adams or whoever could just, like, go in there and control what other people were doing. I mean, that did happen later. It was called the Civil War, I guess. They just didn't want to do that right away, I would argue. But, you know, what do we do when this kind of thing happens? Well, the Supreme Court steps in. So this is an actual Supreme Court case. It's called the State of Maryland versus Irving K. West. And I'm just going to read a couple of short things about what they say. The First Amendment to the Federal Constitution provides, in part, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Since Cantwell versus Connecticut, the Supreme Court of the United States has decisively settled that this mandate of the First Amendment has been made wholly applicable to the states by the 14th Amendment. While recognizing that we are a religious people whose institutions presuppose a supreme being, and that religion has been closely identified with our history and government, the Supreme Court has, without equivocation, made it clear that the scope of the First Amendment was designed forever to suppress the establishment of religion and the prohibition of the free exercise thereof by any state or federal government. As enunciated by Justice Black in Torcaso versus Watkins, we repeat and again reaffirm that neither a state nor the federal government can constitutionally force a person to profess a belief or disbelief in any religion. Neither can constitutionally pass or impose requirements which aid all religions as against non-believers, and neither can aid those religions based on a belief in the existence of God as again those religions founded on different beliefs. So I don't think you can square that circle with the blasphemy laws. I think it makes them basically illegitimate, and they should never have been on the books in the first place. Now, I don't know if you've ever met any of these people, but there are some people who think that there shouldn't be any amendments or that we should only have the original 10. Now, that seems loony because the 13th and 14th Amendments, like, get rid of slavery and cruel and unusual punishments, which isn't exactly true. Slavery is actually legal in the United States because the prison system, like, it literally says in the amendment, only as a form of, like, punishment for being in prison or whatever. But anyways, these people that argue against the Bill of Rights, they don't actually think we should practice slavery. That's not why they say that. They just insist that that's already in the Constitution, which if it was, we should never have had a civil war, and there'd be no reason that anybody thought we should have written the amendments in the first place. These people are goofy. So with regard to the 14th Amendment, protecting your right to practice religion or publicly abstain from religion. So if you're one of those people that thinks that amendments are just government overreach and that the right for religious freedom or to abstain from it was already in the Constitution, then I think that weakens the case for the United States being founded on Christianity, because you'd have to presuppose that religious liberty is built into the Constitution in the first place. Now, for me, though, I actually do think that amendments really do change the Constitution. So I would have to concede some ground that originally that we were sort of a Christian nation. But again, I think it's because of people that were doing things that were directly against the ideas that, for example, Adams had. So this has now created a web that I can't keep track of. So just use this information to help clarify your own beliefs. Now, the kind of like the last thing I want to talk about is, what about the values, right? So maybe not something that's written down anywhere, but like the intangible aspect or the essence or the soul of what America is. Do we have Christian vibes, is what I'm getting at. Well, So like if we take ideas that are supposed to be espoused in Christianity, like turn the other cheek and the golden rule and whatever else, no society has ever really said that lying, murdering, and stealing are legitimate exercises. I mean, like they sort of have, because societies have gone to war against other societies and done unspeakable, atrocious things. They've also done that to themselves before. Actually, funny enough, speaking of that, I just remembered. Here's a clip of Knowles saying something kind of insane.
I'm also pro due process, which unfortunately one political party in this country has abandoned. So then you're against Guantanamo Bay.
Let's just cut through the talking points because,
you're for due process, you're against Gitmo.
Guys,
if you're for due process, you're against Guantanamo Bay. No, I'm for due process for American citizens. I'm not for due process for terrorists.
So the rights only count if you're a United States citizen. So then Knowles must have had absolutely no problem with slavery. Because think about it. If the rights are only for Americans, then if we ship people over from some other country, they don't have rights. And then with regard to the whole thing about Christianity being responsible for ending slavery, I think that that's just an incredibly stupid argument. If America was a Christian nation, then so was the Confederacy. So then you could argue that Christianity lost a war that was fought with the intent of preserving slavery. It works both ways. Now, I don't actually make that argument, but it's the same logic. What I think actually happens is that good people do good things for reasons apart from their religion, and bad people do bad things not always because of their religion, right? Like we had religious people on both sides, Christian people on both sides. So let's cancel the like terms, because otherwise I can just argue Christians fought to preserve slavery, and then somebody else argues Christians fought to end slavery. So get rid of the like terms, and what we have is abolitionists abolished slavery. Plus, I mean, they were hardly the first. And I'm not just talking about like Britain making slavery illegal before we did. Haiti was the first country to actually abolish slavery in the Western Hemisphere. And it wasn't done by Christians. What happened was the slaves themselves rebelled and defeated their Christian persecutors. And then everybody else just copied them. Then also ideas like do unto others, that's not a Judeo-Christian principle. Well, it's not uniquely Judeo-Christian. I mean, this is just overlap again. In fact, we know that many of the hundreds of commandments that are given in the Bible, those are just copied from Babylon and Hammurabi and other Asian civilizations. I'm open to hearing anybody tell me a uniquely Christian value that was formed in a vacuum and then was also later incorporated into the United States. But I think that's going to be an impossible task. Yeah, I mean, even monotheism, that's not uniquely Judeo-Christian. I mean, like Yahweh is a unique God, and then like Jesus is a unique figure, but that doesn't count to me as a uniquely Judeo-Christian idea because monotheism has existed in other parts of the world. So that's what I have to say about it. On balance, I would overwhelmingly say no. I don't really think that we are functionally a Christian nation in terms of like our identity. There's a weak case I think that can be made there. But going back to the original thing, no. To the extent that there were actual laws and things that made us function as a Christian nation, I think that those were mistakes, and those actually were directly against the spirit of why, like part of the reason why America was founded, or at least like part of the founding documents. Please, if you have additional insights, or if you think I messed up on something in here, if you just want to add more, talk about that in the comments section. I would love to learn some additional things. So otherwise, thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll see you soon.